I've always been fascinated by old stories, especially those involving mystery and superstition. So when I heard about a museum in a small town, supposedly built on what used to be a witch's cabin, I couldn't resist. They say if you stay inside after midnight on a full moon Friday, strange things start to happen. I didn't believe it at first, but my curiosity got the better of me. I wanted to see with my own eyes if these rumors were real or just tales to scare off tourists. I arrived at the museum around 11 p.m. It was a simple place, filled with old objects and paintings depicting scenes from a dark era. As midnight approached, the atmosphere seemed to grow colder, even with no windows open. When the clock struck 12:01, the lights flickered. At first, I thought it was just an electrical issue, but then I heard footsteps. There wasn't supposed to be anyone else in the building. The sounds came from upstairs, where an exhibit mimicking the old cabin was located. I climbed the stairs slowly, trying to convince myself it was all in my head. But as soon as I set foot on the second floor, I smelled a strong scent of burning herbs. The air felt heavier, and my heartbeat quickened. The walls were covered in strange symbols I hadn't noticed before, as if they had appeared out of nowhere. Suddenly, I heard a low, chilling laugh. I looked around, but no one was there. It felt as if the cabin itself was alive, watching me. As I walked through the corridors, I noticed objects beginning to move on their own. A rocking chair started to sway slowly, its creaking sound echoing in the silence. Candles on an ancient altar lit up by themselves, casting shadows on the walls that seemed to shift. A deep sense of dread washed over me. I wanted to leave, but the doors were locked, even though I was sure I had left them unlocked when I entered. Then, I saw a figure at the end of the hallway. It was a woman with long, disheveled hair, dressed in old-fashioned clothes. Her eyes glowed a sinister yellow, and she pointed at me without saying a word. I tried to move, but my body wouldn't respond. She started walking toward me slowly, each step making the wooden floor creak loudly, as if it were about to give way. When she got close, she whispered something in a language I didn't understand, but I felt a cold shiver cut through my skin. I woke up on the museum floor as the first rays of sunlight streamed through the cracks. The doors were open, and everything seemed normal, but I knew what had happened wasn't a dream. Since that day, I carry with me the certainty that some stories are better left as stories. I never went back to the museum, but sometimes I still catch the scent of burning herbs and hear that low laugh even when I'm far from there. I've never been the kind of person who believes in legends or horror stories. I always thought they were just made up to scare kids. But everything changed the day I decided to explore a forest near my town. They said that deep in the woods, there was an old cabin where a witch had lived long ago. Of course, I thought it was all nonsense, but my curiosity got the better of me. I grabbed my backpack, a flashlight, and set off, determined to prove there was nothing unusual about that place. The forest was denser than I expected. As I went deeper, the sounds of the outside world faded away, and all I could hear were my own footsteps and the rustling of leaves. After hours of walking, I finally saw the cabin. It looked exactly as described. Small, made of weathered wood, with a door that seemed like it could fall off at any moment. The strangest thing was the feeling of being watched. The air felt heavier, and the forest around me seemed alive. I decided to go in. The door creaked loudly as I pushed it open, revealing a dusty interior covered in cobwebs. In the center of the room was a table filled with objects straight out of a horror movie. Jars of strange liquids, melted candles, and an old book with a cover that looked like it was made of skin. Curious, I opened the book, but the words made no sense. They were written in a language I'd never seen before. Suddenly, the door slammed shut behind me, and my flashlight flickered until it went out. In the darkness, I heard footsteps, first slow, then quicker, circling the cabin. My heart was racing. "Who's there?" I shouted, trying to sound brave, but my voice shook. There was no answer, just the sound of footsteps, now accompanied by whispers. Words I couldn't understand echoed, seeming to come from all directions. Suddenly I felt a presence behind me, something cold brushing the back of my neck. When the flashlight flickered back on, I spun around, but there was no one there. Except the cabin had changed. The jars were now shattered on the floor, and the book, now open to a different page, displayed a strange symbol. Before I could react, I heard a low, chilling laugh from outside. I rushed to the door, struggling to open it, and when I finally did, I found myself standing in a circle of trees, each one marked with deep claw marks, as if something massive had passed through. I've never run so fast in my life. By the time I made it out of the forest, the sun was rising. But I knew something had followed me. Since that night, I haven't been able to sleep without feeling like I'm being watched. And the worst part? Sometimes when I'm alone, I hear those same whispers, like the cabin is still calling me back. I never believed in witches, but after what I experienced, my opinion changed. It all started when I moved into an old house in the countryside. The rent was cheap, which seemed perfect for me, but the locals avoided even talking about the place. They said the last person who lived there vanished without a trace. I laughed at those stories, thinking it was just an attempt to scare outsiders. Big mistake. On the first night, something felt off. The air was heavy, like the house had a secret. I heard footsteps in the hallway, but when I checked, there was no one there. I thought it was just the sound of old wood settling. I decided to ignore it and went to bed. But then the dreams began. Always the same. A woman with long, tangled hair, empty eyes, and a hoarse voice whispering my name. "You'll be mine, too." I woke up drenched in sweat, the echo of her voice still in my ears. One night, while exploring the attic, I found a chest. Inside were old spellbooks, bones, and a doll with nails driven into its chest. That's when I realized the stories about the house weren't just legends. Suddenly, I heard a whisper close to my ear. "You found me." I turned quickly, but there was no one there. The chest felt heavier, as if something invisible was about to emerge from it. Things only got worse. Mirrors shattered for no reason, lights flickered, and I always felt like I was being watched. One night, as I looked out the window, I saw a woman in the yard. It was the same one from my dream. She stood there, staring at me, with a smile that chilled me to the bone. I locked every door, but I knew it was useless. Whatever was outside was already inside. In the end, I knew I had to get rid of the chest. I took it to the yard and poured gasoline over it. As the flames rose, I heard screams coming from inside the chest like something was burning alive. When it all turned to ashes, the presence disappeared. Finally, I felt like I could breathe. But the nightmare wasn't over. Before leaving town, the landlord handed me a letter. It was from the previous tenant with only one sentence: "You can't escape her." Now, even far from that house, I still feel her watching me. Sometimes, in the middle of the night, I hear that familiar whisper, "You'll be mine too." I don't know how much time I have left, but one thing is certain. If someone ever finds this account, know that the witch always finds a way to return,